Curtis stands in his backyard, witnessing a terrifying sight. A massive tornado funnel is forming nearby and a strange, oily rain begins to fall from the sky. But soon he realizes it's just a nightmare. Once again, he decides not to share his dreams with anyone. Curtis is an ordinary family man with a loving wife Samantha and a young daughter Hannah who is deaf. After saying goodbye to his family, he heads off to work at the local construction company. However, this time a storm interrupts their work. Curtis and his colleague Duarte decide to wait it out at a nearby bar. Before they part ways, a slightly tipsy Duarte comments on how lucky Curtis is to have such a great family. When Curtis gets home, his wife asks him to clear some trash from the yard because their daughter, Hannah, found a board with a nail sticking out and could have hurt herself. That night, Curtis has a disturbing dream where he and Hannah are in the yard, and a powerful storm approaches. The situation escalates when their dog Red breaks free from his leash and charges at Curtis. Upon waking, Curtis is surprised to find that his arm, which was bitten in the dream, actually hurts. Concerned, he decides to limit Hannah's time with Red for a while. At work, Curtis and Duarte get a stern reprimand from their boss for ending their shift early the day before due to the weather. After this, they return to their worksite, where Curtis notices a murmuration of a flock of birds moving in a strange, almost ominous pattern in the sky. Throughout the day, Curtis's arm continues to ache. Later, when Curtis finally gets home, he immediately heads out with Samantha to attend a class for parents of children with hearing impairments, still in his dirty work clothes. This causes some tension between him and his wife, and they nearly get into an argument. In another unsettling dream, Curtis finds himself in his pickup truck with Hannah during a violent storm. Due to poor visibility, he almost hits a figure dressed in white, causing an accident. When he comes to, Curtis realizes that they are being attacked by strangers who abduct Hannah right out of the truck. On a Sunday morning, Samantha and Hannah head to a local fair to sell some old items they no longer need. Curtis stays home and decides to build a fence around the doghouse and move their dog there. His attention is then drawn to an old storm shelter on the property. When he steps inside, he finds only a small room with a bench. An idea begins to form in Curtis's mind. He could repair and improve this shelter. That night, Curtis dreams that Hannah is staring out the window at the pouring rain. Outside, he notices a figure and, filled with fear, pulls his daughter away from the window. The stranger starts pounding on the door and suddenly, the entire house is lifted into the air as if caught in a tornado. When Curtis wakes up, he realizes he has wet the bed. He decides to keep this incident to himself. The constant stress and hidden fears make him increasingly irritable, leading to frequent arguments with his wife over the smallest things. Later, Curtis takes his daughter to the library. After settling her with a children's book, he begins searching for literature on psychiatry for himself. On their way home, they stop by a supermarket where Curtis decides to stock up on canned goods. Because of this, they are late for a family dinner, where Curtis casually mentions his plans to clear out the old storm shelter in the yard. That night, Curtis spends time improving the bunker and delving into the books he picked up from the library. The next morning, he visits the local Dr. Shannon and shares his experiences with the nightmares, hoping to get some medication. The doctor prescribes a mild sedative and recommends that Curtis see a qualified psychiatrist he knows. Meanwhile, Samantha receives good news. She finds out that a doctor has been located who can perform cochlear implant surgery on their daughter, which could restore her hearing. Fortunately, Curtis's insurance will cover the expenses. Samantha eagerly shares this news with Curtis when she gets home. Before bed, Curtis takes the prescribed sedative and for once, his night is free of nightmares. However, while at work the next day, he suddenly hears thunder despite the clear sky. This triggers a panic attack, and he leaves the worksite early. On his way home, he notices a large shipping container for sale, which catches his interest. That same day, Curtis decides to visit his mother, who is in a specialized care facility, and asks her how her schizophrenia symptoms first began, leading to her being placed there. His mother explains that she didn't experience nightmares, but she constantly felt a sense of anxiety, as if someone was always watching her. Curtis begins to suspect that he might be developing similar symptoms to his mother. However, that night he still makes a list of the items he needs to set up the bunker. The next morning, he goes to the bank and takes out a loan against the house to fund his plans. On the worksite, Curtis apologizes to Duarte for abruptly leaving work the day before and during lunch, asks him for help with building the storm shelter. Duarte agrees without hesitation. Later, Curtis meets with a psychologist named Kender and explains that test results suggest he has psychosis rather than schizophrenia. At the specialist's request, he shares the story of his mother, whose paranoid schizophrenia fully manifested when she was the same age Curtis is now. She had abandoned 10-year-old Curtis in a parking lot and was found a week later, digging through trash bins in a neighboring town. In the evening, the family attends their usual sign language classes. On the way home, while his wife and daughter sleep in the car, Curtis watches flashes of lightning in the sky and wonders if anyone else can see them besides him. On Sunday, while Samantha and Hannah are busy at the fair, Curtis and Duarte bring an excavator from work and start expanding the shelter, turning it into a full-fledged bunker. When Samantha sees what Curtis is spending money on, she becomes furious, leading to a serious conflict. This, along with the recently taken loan, results in a heated argument between the couple that night. However, Curtis never explains to his wife why he sent Red to live outside and why he spends so much time in the underground shelter. Before bed, Curtis decides to increase the dose of his sedative, hoping it will be more effective. However, during the night, he starts feeling unwell, and Samantha has to call an ambulance. Once the danger passes, Curtis finally decides to tell his wife about his recurring nightmares, where a terrifying storm haunts him. In the most recent dream, he saw Duarte, who suddenly, overcome with rage, attacked him with an axe. Curtis begins to suspect that he might be facing the same issues as his mother, but he vows never to abandon his family. The next day, on his way to work, Curtis asks his boss to transfer Duarte to another crew, explaining that it's difficult for him to lead his best friend. Despite some hesitation, the boss agrees. Before Duarte finds out about this decision, they lower a large shipping container into the dugout pit. Curtis continues spending money, buying gas masks for the entire family. When his older brother, concerned about Curtis's mental state, asks if everything is okay, Curtis reassures him that he has everything under control and gives him his dog. That night, Curtis dreams of an endless rain outside his house. In the kitchen stands a soaked Samantha, who looks at him and then shifts her gaze to a knife lying on the table. When Curtis wakes up in the morning, he begins to feel a sense of fear even towards his wife. Later, Curtis's boss visits him and informs him that Duarte suspects Curtis of intentionally transferring him to a different crew to set him up. In retaliation, Duarte reveals that they had been using construction equipment for Curtis's personal needs. As a result, Duarte is fined and Curtis is fired, with only 2 weeks of insurance left, jeopardizing Hannah's surgery, which is scheduled for 6 weeks later. With these mounting problems, tension between Curtis and Samantha escalates. When Samantha learns what happened, she is overcome with anger and slaps Curtis across the face. None of the psychologists can help Curtis deal with his issues, and he continues working on his storm shelter. Samantha begins to suspect that Curtis has completely lost his mind and might be a danger to their daughter. However, she decides to stay by his side and face these challenges together. The family attends a Sunday dinner, where most of the town has gathered. It's there that Duarte confronts Curtis, demanding to know why his former friend had him transferred to another crew, leading to a fight. Curtis defends himself and finally musters the courage to tell everyone, who thinks he's crazy, about the impending destructive storm. But when he sees no reaction from the crowd, he breaks down in tears, and his wife and daughter gently lead him away. That night, Curtis dreams of the approaching storm and a flock of birds that, after flying through his daughter, fall lifeless to the ground. At that moment, the family is awakened by a real siren. They rush outside into the pouring rain and take shelter in the underground bunker. Curtis forces his wife to put on a gas mask and his daughter an oxygen mask. After some time, Samantha wakes Curtis, telling him he can take off the gas mask, and asks him to open the bunker because everything outside is over. Curtis cautiously approaches the door and says he hears thunder outside, though neither his wife nor his daughter hears anything. Samantha asks him again to open the door, but Curtis refuses and hands her the key. However, she doesn't take it, saying that if he doesn't open the door himself, he'll remain in the bunker forever and won't be able to overcome his problem. Overcoming his fear, Curtis finally opens the door and sees sunlight. Outside, everything is calm. There's no thunder or rain. People are busy cleaning up after a minor storm. Realizing he was wrong, Curtis embraces his family. Later, the couple visits a psychiatrist who prescribes Curtis the necessary medication and advises them to get away from the bunker for a while and then consider inpatient treatment. The family eventually finds a way to afford a cottage by the sea. Curtis begins to feel better, and it seems like life is gradually getting back on track. But suddenly, he notices a tornado over the water, then another. At first, Curtis thinks it might just be a hallucination. However, Hannah signals to him with a gesture that means a storm is coming, and Samantha sees strange, oily raindrops just like the ones in Curtis's dreams begin to fall from the sky. Realizing that everything Curtis had warned about is actually happening, the couple exchanges anxious looks. The beginning of what Curtis had feared is now becoming a reality. And that's where our video ends. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.